Go figure. We're sitting here fucking around in the background.
Just bullshitting.
Yeah.
Working. We were working.
Yeah, of course we were.
Yeah.
Anyways, welcome to the Ethan and Jenna host. Wow. Welcome to the Ethan and Jenna show. I'm your host, Ethan. Alongside me is
me, Jenna Belk. Hi.
And our special guest for the evening is
beneath you both.
For the morning.
Yeah.
So, mental health and humor. It's a great way to start a show with me giggling like a friggin' 12-year-old.
Yeah. The importance of humor.
Yeah. So, Jenna, how was your week?
I got my first ultrasound.
How was it?
There's a real baby in there.
Oh my goodness.
I got confirmation.
Did they tell you how big it is? Did they do the thing where they compare it to a food?
Yes. It's almost the size of a lime. I thought that it was the size of a lime a while ago. Turns out it's a little bit smaller than what the projection was. And so due dates changed to July 5th. And I'm now back at 11 weeks. Lime baby.
And how are you feeling about it? Are you excited?
Actually, last night was the first night that I had a dream that I have a child, and it was a little baby. So I guess I'm excited.
Good. Yeah. I'm excited for you, Jenna.
Thanks. But I got insurance. News update.
Hell yeah.
We can't afford it, but we do have it.
Hey, good. I'm so happy for you.
So thank you. Yes. Anyone else? What's going on?
Yeah, Kenneth. What about you?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I just put up another interview on my channel. I've got a couple coming up. There's this up and coming small YouTuber podcaster guy named Seth Andrews, and I thought I would try to help him out with some exposure on my channel, because we're a community and it's important to try to help out, people. So I had him on, and then he was like, have me on, and I was like, okay, shit. And then up next, I've got Mandisa Thomas is going to be coming on, which I'm over the moon thrilled about, because Mandisa is a powerhouse in every respect. And then who's up after that? Vila Bianca coming up after that. So looking forward to talking to them. And we have a thing coming up, Ethan, in another week that I am very excited about, as they say in Canada. Do they say that other places? I don't know. I don't want to single out the Canadians.
I've heard it in Canada.
Yeah, maybe Minnesota. But we're going to be doing the. Well, maybe you should talk about it, because it's going to be on your channel. It's going to be I think this is going to be an exciting event.
So we will be reviewing The Atheist Religion by Matt Powell, Saturday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. It'll be myself, Kenneth Leonard, and Brainbug, and we will be picking apart all the inaccuracies and hopefully finding a lot of humor in that movie.
Evaluating. With
we're going
to talk about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I had asked Ethan for like a link to the video, and he sent it to me. I got about 20 minutes into it, and I started scrolling through the comments, which I normally don't look at YouTube comments at all because it's a nightmare. But I was just like, who's reading this or who's watching this? And there was a ton of comments of people being like, I bet non-believers' heads are exploding right now because all these arguments are so good. I wish I could just see how it looks on like an atheist's face when they watch this. And I was like, we should show you what it looks like on an atheist's face when they watch this.
Nice. So
that's what we're going to do. It's really we're hoping to draw in people who are Matt Powell stans. So, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I am actually really excited about this. I'll be talking about my experiences on set with Mr. Powell.
On set? How was craft services? Did they take care of you?
It was freezing. It was so cold, man. Like, if you see in the movie, I'm just like, you're freezing my ass off, man.
I thought you were just really uncomfortable, like conversationally, with your body language, but cold makes sense too.
That's true. I was with two people I was warned not to sit down with who were sitting there recording me. And I was paranoid because people were like, he's going to screw with your footage. He's going to he tried stopping my recordings. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't know this guy. I will err on the side of caution. I had my one phone. I had two phones set up and then audio recording in my pocket. I'm like, this guy, there's no way anything is getting shut off. I have backups of backup just to make sure. And anytime I saw like the brother go back, like out of the corner of my eye, I would go and then I'd be like, oh, can we take a break for a second? I'd go back around, like make sure it was still recording. But to be fair, he obviously didn't mess or even try to mess with anything.
As a general rule, I recommend never going with an apologist to a second location. That's just a life tip.
And there's more I do want to talk about, but we got to save that for the episode.
Precisely.
That's Saturday. But if you want to talk about humor or you've got a joke you can share with us, please call the show and let us know.
Oh, please call in with jokes.
There was a comment. I'm just going to try and find this real quick. Give me like 1 second that I wanted to put up on screen because it goes to show like the type of humor I appreciate. But I can't find this damn comment. Best name, where is your comment? Someone talk for a second while I look.
Humor is different in Sweden, though, so there might be a bit of a language barrier thing.
Oh.
We had to actually export humor to Sweden from, I think it was England that did that originally.
All right. So
where's this going?
This is the comment I wanted to put up. This and here's why. Because, so for instance, I was having kind of a rough day yesterday. And I was talking to Best Name Ever, and I was like, man, I wish Lori was here. Like my ex, I'm like, she always knows how to cheer me up. I'm like, she'll end up like calling me some stupid name, flicking me off, and then I'll start laughing like a child. And so Best Name said, well, in the words of Lori, and she sent me a middle finger with a heart, and I started fucking dying, man. And that's what I don't get. I know some people, like in conversations with our mutual friend Puck, that would be viewed as like disrespectful to him. So that type of humor I won't use. Like I can't look at him and be like, hey, and then insert like a nickname for him. But with other people, I can be like, hey, asshat, what's up? Or what's going on, fucker? And people will laugh at that. Like to me, like that type of banter, that it's just fun and it makes me laugh.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that's important to be able to laugh at stuff like that. But just so I kind of mentioned briefly before the show that I have a history of being bullied and laughed at. And so I don't particularly so not only by classmates, but I had a sibling that she was really funny, but she was freaking hilarious. The kind of mockery, but it was funny. In general, I still didn't like it. Does that make sense?
It does. And mockery is such like a hard line to find, because you could mock someone maliciously and then you could mock someone like in a humorous way. But then, as you just said, if you were, picked on or mocked as a child, that can bring up, it can be hard for you. Now, for me, I was like, until like 6th grade, I was picked on a lot. Like I was a total fucking nerd. So humor became my coping mechanism. Like I started going with my own self-deprecating humor because I laugh at my own misfortunes, because to me it makes them easier to deal with. Kind of like I'm paraphrasing Voltaire here, but he had this idea that when you like make people laugh at something, they will never take it seriously again. And he would mock Rousseau endlessly. And I think to an extent that's important to do, because it helps us enjoy life a little bit more when you can just laugh at things that suck. But that's my opinion. I don't think that's the same case for everybody.
There's also a distinction between laughter and humor. There's a number of great researchers out there who've studied sort of the what happens in the brain with humor. And there's a guy, Carl Marchi, who is a professor of psychiatry at Harvard, and he directs the Social Neuroscience Project at Massachusetts General Hospital. He talks about how humor is an evoked response to storytelling and shifting expectations, while laughter is more of a social signal between human beings. So, I mean, it's possible for people to laugh at something and for it to not be funny at all because they're participating in something that's more like a social, ritual or something. But so that's just with respect to what Jenna said, especially, I think that there's a flag that needs to be planted between laughter and humor, because some shit ain't funny, but people will still laugh at it.
Yeah.
And
Larry the Cable Guy comes to mind.
Well, see, this is
I actually like that movie.
I've never seen it. I know who he is. I've just never seen it.
It's a funny movie.
Where I find, like, I have to be really careful with my humor publicly, especially because I am left leaning. So I know that some of the jokes I make can be viewed as insensitive, or actually
literally he's left. He has one leg that's shorter than the other. So he's and he can't joke about it because he doesn't want to offend other people who may have other.
There are people that have that.
Because he's left leaning.
See, I don't know. I feel, because I know what it's like to be picked on for whatever it is that makes you feel different. So I feel bad for laughing at anyone for any reason, whether it is humorous or not.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I not only hold back a lot of my opinions, I hold back so much humor. Like, I can't tell you, for every one humorous post you see of mine, I promise you there are 10 more that are way fucking funnier, but I can't post them because I know it will upset people. And it's like, to me, humor is one of the most useful tools at our disposal, particularly in conversation. For instance, let's say you are engaging with someone in a heated debate. Once it starts getting heated, what happens? Their defenses go up. They're no longer listening. Their heels are dug in and they're not moving. But when you take a joke or make them to laugh, that barrier, it goes back down and they start listening and engaging to you more. And I think it's something people should recognize, just how powerful it can be in dealing with pain, suffering, or just calming down a situation.
Yeah, as a tool for social cohesion, humor's super powerful.
It was. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say it's an interesting thing. I remember years ago there was a comedian named Patrice ONeill who appeared on, I don't remember what the show was. I think it might have been like a CNN or Fox News type of, talking panel show to talk about a comedian who'd been fired for making some I think it was racist jokes on a radio show. And Patrice went back and forth with a person on the panel talking about how comedians are sort of like stuntmen. When Evel Knievel shows up to jump the school buses on his motorcycle, it doesn't matter if he lands the jump. He's getting paid for the attempt, and people will appreciate that what he was trying to do was land the stunt. And the idea that Patrice was exploring was that comedians, he was arguing they should be free to explore really any topic, any subject matter, any time, with the understanding from people listening that what they're trying to do is just be funny. And so, but this is a thing that's sort of controversial nowadays. A lot of people feel like there are topics that are off limits. So I understand the impulse to self-censorship there, Ethan, but I've heard so many comics talk about this over the Joan Rivers, actually, I think maybe best of all. She did a joke about something and people started groaning in the audience. And she talked about how laughter takes away the power of traumatic events in her life, and that all of her material is her working through her own stuff. And if you don't like it, leave. Basically, Joan Rivers was a badass, but yeah.
that's like, dude, that's exactly how I feel. Like, that's why I know there are times I have people in my life that like, you don't take life seriously enough. And I'm like, dude, you're taking this shit way too seriously. Like, yes, there are times you have to be serious. You need to be an adult, but we do not need to walk around 8 hours a day with a stick in our ass. Like, to give an example.
So, go ahead.
Like, when we were still in the office, the vice president of our company brought in cheesecake for a team that wasn't ours. So what was my response to the vice president of the company? I formed this little threatening letter with like those old newspaper clipping types and said if he didn't get me some cheesecake, I would prevent him from being able to log into his computer again. Most people would be like, what the hell is wrong with you? But you know what? He laughed his fucking ass off, and I got some cheesecake out of it.
What were you going to say, Jenna?
Well, there's some people who, like me, who don't necessarily understand humor half the time. There's a lot of humor that, like Kenneth said, that some people there's difference between laughter and humor. But there's a lot of actual humor out there that is hard for me to see. And so there's a lot of times that people will think that I have a stick up my ass when the joke simply just went way over my head.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
What's your favorite type of humor?
I have discovered that I like humor when it's like stand up, like with a purpose. So I started learning on my atheist journey. And part of this journey was a documentary actually about Bill Murray. And I discovered that he has a kind of a trend in all of his movies and his throughout his life. He has a trend of this quote that he's used, and it doesn't even matter. And it's pretty nihilistic. But I didn't understand that the fact that he kept repeating it. I thought, no, he's got to be kidding. But I think he was being serious, and that's how he sees life. But he used humor to get that message across to people. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. But it was Bill Murray who was the first person who showed me that you can use humor to get a message across.
Yep.
And ever since then, I've been listening for people's messages. And so now it's the message mostly that can, tick me either way. Why do you look confused? What did I say?
Well, what I'm wondering is like if there are specific examples of other comics that you've found where if it's any particular type of message, or if it's just that person allowing themselves to show through, or how that.
Like for example, there was a Netflix comedy series put together where they put like a whole bunch of comedians, had like 5 or 10 minute clips of each different comedian, and they were all different from different places and all this stuff. And I was going through and I noticed that I just really didn't like crude humor. I just don't find it funny. Like, it's not that I'm angry school teacher about it. I just don't find it humorous. And so there's a lot of crude stuff out there that everybody's laughing at that I'm just like, eh.
Yeah, I can see that. I guess you could say, like, I like crude humor, but I don't engage in it publicly. Like, in my private life, there are friends who like have the same humor as me, and they'll send me something that like I recognize is really messed up, but it's also very funny. However, I would never take that humor publicly, and I don't think a lot of those should be taken publicly, because it can be offensive, particularly to people who are already suffering. But there also lies a problem. Should we, even if two people have the same humor, should they still be engaging in humor that can be harmful if shared publicly?
I just think you should be careful about. So that's the thing about walking that line of humor and laughter, because laughter can be extremely harmful. And if you're one of those people that's trying to turn laughter into humor and you fail, then you're in fact just spreading harm.
That's true.
You're not helping anymore.
It's an interesting thing because, yeah, I mean, this is like the ultimate intent versus impact question, right? I mean,
right.
You can be trying to be funny and you can really harm somebody. Well, you can hurt their feelings, which is harm. I don't know. I used to live in New York, and I spent a lot of time at comedy clubs, one in particular. And I just used to love watching the comedians come up and work. And I loved watching them work through ideas and test stuff that, wouldn't work. Sometimes you'd see a comic in there who would try something out, and then a couple weeks later they'd come in and they'd try it, and they would just have the timing would be a little bit different. There's an art to it, and it would land, because they tried something different. I never really, it seemed cheap to me, the ones who came in and just were overtly attempting to make an audience uncomfortable or to offend. I
see what you're saying. It's going to happen.
I appreciate when there's a craft to it, when there's a positive intent that's like, I'm going to set up, I mean, because humor works on this, there's this whole, cognitive construct that's called surprise and coherence. So the way that humor works in the brain, you recognize an incongruity in something. So if you got like a punchline, that seems out of place compared with the joke setup, there's your incongruity. And then you get this surprise and coherence thing happening where your brain is trying to resolve the incongruity. And then the laughter is your brain, you're rewarding something, going, okay, well, that was clever. This is, worth me, laughing at, or even just recognizing that it's funny. There's neurotransmitters, positive ones that release in your brain when it's like a reward that your brain gives itself for resolving that incongruity. And that's why laughing feels good. So it's a different response when you're just like, oh my God, I'm nervous, I'm uncomfortable, and I'm going to laugh because like that's a very different vibe. So one I think is superior to the other. And when I'm watching a comedian work, if they're trying for that, to make humor happen in the brain, even if they're saying something that could be construed as offensive, I tend to kind of let them slide a little bit. I think there are lines, but mostly I think that you should be able to joke about just about anything.
I'm of the same page, and it's so hard to explain it to people because some people, I don't know, I can't even think of how to word this, but I don't think everyone gets both the importance of humor or what humor is and why making light of certain, not all, certain tragedies is important. So, for example, someone earlier in the comments said she would not laugh about like child molestation. I wouldn't either. Like, there's nothing funny in that. And while I have dark humor, that is just messed up and not something I would ever joke about. But I do think it is important for us to find ways to laugh off our misfortunes. But again, I can't speak for other people. I just find that contributes to my mental health the most. For example, when I used to have like really down days, I would make a post and be like, I'm kind of having an off day, guys. People roast me. And seeing some of the creative ways people would make fun of me would just like, I would be in hysterics laughing at some of the stupid things I do. And I wish more people could understand like how beneficial that can be, just to be able to look at some of the things you do and find how ridiculous they are. Or maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm a ridiculous person, so I have a lot more things to laugh about.
So I already spend way too much of my time overanalyzing my life. I am extremely aware of every fault that I have. So for other people to point them out to me, 90% of the time, I'm like, I already fucking know that. Like, I'm working on it or whatever, And so that frustrates me to be told to do what I'm already doing. Or just, I don't know.
here's a, oh, I apologize. Please
Go
continue.
ahead.
Here's a great example. One of my biggest insecurities is my intelligence and my knowledge. Like, I will like constantly listen to people like Kenneth, Jenna, V, Eric, and I'm just like, how do these people know this much shit? Like, and it can be overwhelming because I am in a community of people who know science, biology, evolution, the Bible. They like know everything. So how no, I'm serious. You guys know so much. And then what's terrifying is when you guys are like, no, I actually really know like nothing. And I'm like, if you guys know nothing, then what do I actually know? But here's, to me, I turn it into humor. Like, like, if anyone watches Friends, like, I always like make Joey jokes. Like, I'm that laughable airhead in the room. It is my way to cope with one of my insecurities, because to me, that's something I struggle with regularly. And the best way for me to deal with it while continuing to try and improve myself is to mock myself and enjoy and laugh at the obvious airheadedness of who I am.
That makes sense. So how do you help somebody find the funny?
I don't know. That's the tough part. Is like, usually, like, okay, so here's an example. I could post something on Facebook as a singular post, and the same joke I've told people in person, and they'll be like, oh my God, this is so offensive. However, when they see me tell it, a surprisingly less amount of people find it offensive. I think it goes into...
Okay.
Well, it's also so easy for people behind their keyboard to be like, I am mad.
Yeah,
I can't believe this.
A lot of people
face to face.
See the negative.
I have a disarming demeanor overall. People think I'm younger, I'm a child, I'm goofy. So it calms them down. It typically makes people to be more open with me. And when they see my humor, I think they see me as just being goofy and fun. And therefore, the way I'm interacting, how do I explain this? See, I hate this. I can never always like explain things the way I want to explain. But I feel like the way people perceive my intent, it's easier for them to perceive my intent in person versus a Facebook post, which makes my humor better in person.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, also in the written word, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I see this on Twitter all the time. You know, you can't read someone's inflection. You can't read. I mean, it's hard to read intent into anything that's the written word. You've got to, especially if it's, 140 something characters, it's like someone can be making a joke and you're like, no, that's not a joke. That's a political statement. And now I'm pissed off. And you could be totally just on different wavelengths. It happens all the time. Can I back up though a little bit? So I'm going to take this to like a really, really real place so you talked about joking about like sexual abuse and
no, I would not joke about.
No, you mentioned it as something that you wouldn't joke about.
Oh, okay.
Like 5 minutes ago, you said that you're like, this, some people will joke about this. I wouldn't do that. I think that it's wrong. So I used to joke quite a bit about sexual abuse, within a specific certain context, like telling jokes about like pedophile priests and that kind of stuff. And the reason for that, and I don't think I've talked about this publicly before, is that when I was a little kid, I was sexually abused by someone in my parents' church. And for years, it was my shield, man. I would joke about this stuff. And there's this trope that's existed for centuries for a reason of like the sad clown, where there's this person who's really hurting with something, but then they put on the mask that's like the laughing, haha, I'm fine, can't touch me with this shit, but they're not dealing with it. And an important thing I feel like we need to say when it comes to mental health and humor is that humor is a good coping mechanism. It's considered like a positive coping mechanism. But if it's all you're doing, if you're putting up the happy mask and making fun of something without, going and talking to like a mental health professional, I promise you're setting yourself up for dysfunction in your life. And there are so many examples of people, I'm getting all preachy, look at people like Robin Williams or, Mitch Hedberg, Greg Giraldo. I mean, there's all these amazing comics who they're hurting inside, and their talent with humor is like, stratospheric. But it's not enough. Humor's great. It's a tool, but it should not be like the foundation of anyone's mental health approach. So we have to say that.
I'm glad you brought that up, and that's why I did say, like, for example, like, even though I'll mock my own humor, I'll mock my own lack of knowledge, I still recognize that it's a problem, and I continue to work on it and try and learn.
Yeah.
So, I agree. Humor should not be the only outlet and a means to just completely ignore and not face reality or real problems, but it is something that really can help you.
But also, it doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to. What?
Like, it doesn't have to be what you use to help you through something.
Yeah.
Like that's one thing that I think people get confused, is that just because humor may help one person doesn't mean it will help the next.
Yeah. Yeah. And if some horrible shit is happening in someone's life and they're like, I don't see anything funny about this.
Right.
I think that's something that needs to be respected.
Right.
And you can't be like, no, come on, like, it's funny. You got cancer or whatever, but like, it's hysterical. Like, don't be that guy who tries to like force humor on somebody who's just not there.
Right.
This is also a thing, though, about like the distinction between like private life versus like comedians working on stage. If you go to a comedy club and you see a comic trying to work out something and you've put yourself in that atmosphere where people are going to be telling jokes that could be offensive, and then you get all mad about it, I don't have a whole lot of tolerance for you. But in a one-on-one with somebody, if someone's like, talking about how something bad happened to them and you start joking about it and you're like, I'm just not there, man. Back off. Like, don't be a dick.
Yes, absolutely.
So you say maybe there's a level of responsibility that comes with humor, is maybe reading the audience.
Yeah, it's just finding balance. That's the thing, and I think that the point you're making about people, you don't have to find anything funny. And this whole thing about some people finding something's funny and other people not. There's no right or wrong way. Our brains are all wired differently. Right. There's a lot of people out there who I'll be like, I don't think they really realize that I'm like a hilarious person, and I just have to, like, that's my cross to bear. It's not anything bad about them.
Have y'all seen The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
Yeah,
I have not.
Okay, I find it hilarious, and everybody that I know has found it hilarious. So if you want to add something to your list that everyone finds funny, it's a good show.
Very, very well written.
Yes. And it's not even, so it's about a woman in like the 50s or 60s where she becomes a woman comedian, which is just really tough to do those days. Mm-hmm. And so it's not even the comedy, the stand-up comedy that she does that I find so funny. It's just who she is. I just find her funny, her whole character funny, the way that she expresses herself.
Brain left the station. Hang on.
Ethan's going to say something. I see it. It's happening.
And then it went away.
I can't believe no one's called in to tell a joke.
Sorry, there actually are two people on the line.
Shit. Oh my God.
You guys, I forgot to pay attention to people calling in.
I did too. We got all psychoanalysis about this.
Bunch of nerds, man.
Before we take the call, I do think it's important. Like when you said reading the room, I agree. Like I do, like if I'm in like a smaller like room of people, I will try and find like the sad person, because usually I find I can cheer people up. But I am not going to walk up to that sad person and immediately tell like an offensive joke. I'll get like a feel for him. I'll talk to him, or I'll do something stupid. Like I am extremely accident prone. Like if there's something to walk into, I will walk into it. Sometimes, like if I see someone who's having a down day, I will intentionally play that up and just be like, I'll wait for them to look and I'll be like, and I'll do like something. And then all of a sudden I see a smirk and I'm like, cool, that worked. And then like, I can mock myself from that point and then initiate a conversation. I don't know. If I feel like I should stop saying feel, I think that if we found ways to just notice the people who are not having the best day and go out of our way to just make them smile. Not only will their mental health improve, but your own mental health will improve because you'll feel good about making someone else smile. And people need breaks from how sucky life can be, and humor can do that. It can take them away from a moment of agony or suffering or even pain and just laugh.
I'm a big believer in that. And I would say that from my experience talking to people and about their problems and things, most of the time it's loneliness that causes the depression, sadness. And so if you're trying to make somebody laugh, half the time, just the effort that you're putting into trying to make somebody smile can loosen them up and help. Just showing that you care. So
that's I've all that's why I finally got kind of the courage to start posting goofy dance videos. Dude, I never would have done that 5 years ago. I was too I'm weird. I'm not normal. Nobody does this until finally
call them goofy. I mean, that's your art, man. And I'm joking. I'm joking. They're very goofy. They're very goofy.
I don't get it. I'm like, yeah.
I remember just doing these things. I will start dancing and then all of a sudden I'm bursting up laughing. And then finally one day I'm like, okay, look, I make myself laugh a lot. Maybe recording myself doing this stupid shit will make other people laugh. And it helped build my confidence, because for most of my life, people would tell me to calm down, be an adult, act like this. Why you got to do this? So for me, it gave me a sense of validation, knowing that people were actually accepting of me as a person being that goofy dude. Because for so long, that was not acceptable in most of my life and most of even my relationships. And it's nice to have that. Should we get to our caller?
Yes.
Okay. One dropped, probably from me rambling so long. Trigger warning. Chris, you're on with Ethan and Jenna and Kenneth.
Hello.
Chris?
That's what it says. It says Chris.
This isn't Chris. No.
Oh,
IQ?
IQ? It says
kind
Chris.
of on the opposite end of the spectrum, but close.
Oh, Chris Condry.
That's really
Chris
far away.
Quandary, but it's apparently supposed to be inquisitive quandary.
That's new name, Chris Quandary. I like it.
Chris Condry.
I'm like, great. This week I can call in and I don't have to worry about beating Kenneth to the punch. All the material. And I'm sitting back here 20 minutes, and there may or may not be any more green M&Ms back here, by the way. But he just keeps talking, and I'm sitting back here crossing shit off the list of shit I can talk about. No. At least I can beat him to the let's just have a moment of silence for the birth of baby Jesus.
Oh,
this holiday season.
I have my Jesus tree
left.
Oh God.
Jenna's got one. Jenna's got a Jesus tree
with that one.
It's an Xmas tree.
Yeah. Humor is where it's at. And it's not like it's a requirement for humanity. It's just a part of it. Not everybody gets sad at everything. Some people have a really thick skin about certain things and they can just let it roll off of them a lot easier than somebody else would. It doesn't make them insensitive. They just have a different mind frame of being able to handle the world around them. Same thing with comedy. There's a balance to be achieved with life. And no two people are going to treat it exactly the same way. But I mean, with comedy, it's kind of almost like a objectively subjective area because it involves experience. Because those are the funniest things is when you're sharing a funny moment with somebody, you both understand the situation. and there's kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of elbow nudge that you both understand about it, that you know everything's okay, but there was almost like a struggle there that is completely benign, but you understand what was going on, how it's kind of a weird situation, but everything turns out okay, and you kind of laugh about that, and it's almost impossible to describe what funny is in a general sense. It's just what it is to somebody, and it's really just taking those moments of strife and realizing that it's okay in the end, which is why we have the phrase "reading the room," because you're going to have so many different experiences.
Right.
Not everybody's going to understand everything, and you need to be able to reach what that person is going to understand. And there's some general topics, and there's some things you can joke about. The things that are just generally too harmful, and things that cause people too much pain, and things that are not easily gotten over. Trauma, stuff like that. Number one, you'll never see how good somebody stands behind their actions and what they're about than to joke about their actions. There's sometimes a lot of guilt and a lot of uneasiness about themselves that you're going to bring to the surface if you joke about something that they're struggling with.
Right.
But if it's something that they accept, and it's just like, this is me, if you consider it a flaw, whatever, I might consider it a flaw, but I'm okay with it because that's just me. And that's something that you're talking about, Ethan, is that, just fucking roast me because I'm okay with me. And I know what I do, and this is what makes me, even though everybody's got their struggles, but you can just lay it out there on the fucking table. And if you can be okay with somebody pointing shit out about you, because you already know it, and even Jenna said that, I already know everything about me. Go ahead and tell me about it. And, I can laugh about it because if there's a problem in my life, something I need to work on, I'm working on it. And I'm doing everything that I can. And I've hit this level in my life where I am at peace with everything about myself. So we can put shit out on the table. If that brings somebody joy, fucking have at it, because I'm good. And if that makes somebody else happy to point something out about me, cool. I can brighten somebody else's day on something that's not making mine any darker, because I've already been through the shit and I'm cool with it.
I agree with you to an extent, IQ. Here's where I disagree. I can't say that I'm at peace or completely comfortable with like my insecurities or mess ups. Like, I do throw myself out there. I do mock myself, but that doesn't mean I've like completely accepted like who I am as a person, but I am attempting to, and humor helps me get there quicker.
And I agree with you on that. It's not necessary to be completely like zen with yourself and be completely okay with everything. You've recognized everything about yourself, and you don't necessarily even have to be comfortable with it. You just have to recognize it about yourself and know that that's just part of you. And if there's something you can do about it, if there's really not much you can do about it, it's not really a problem. Even if you consider it to be a problem, just recognizing it about yourself is a good step to be able to be more comfortable. Like I said, everybody has their struggles, but being able to put the struggles out on the table without cringing, that's a really good step to being able to find the humor in yourself. And just, life isn't perfect. Nobody's perfect. Shit's gonna suck at some point in your life, pretty much the whole time. Expecting that is good. If it always happens, that sucks, because it might not. But prepare for the worst, hope for the best. And that's how you can get a better outlook to not be so damn down all the time.
Psychologists talk about
taking the hits and roll with it.
Psychologists talk about this concept of resilience, this idea that there's an ability that can be cultivated of how to cope positively with or adapt well to trauma and stress. And there's an awful lot of research out there that shows that humor is one of several behaviors that someone can engage in that can make them more resilient. But again, it's one tool in a toolbox. But yeah, it can be very effective.
So I don't understand, there have been times where I go and I hang out with a new group of people, and there's somebody, let's say there's somebody in the group who is in a wheelchair, and it's an obvious disability that's in the group, right? And I'm not familiar with hanging out with people in wheelchairs. I don't know what comes with that struggle, right?
You're saying this is already funny to you when you see someone?
No, no. What I'm
you're
saying is that then when I hear people in that group making jokes about it with that person, and that person finds it funny or whatever, and I typically am confused as to why this is funny. And then just from being a kid and trying to fit in, I would try to make jokes like the rest of the group, and I would do it wrong, and it would be offensive. And it's like, I think that that's why I just stopped doing it, because I think that I'm just being dishonest to myself, because that's just not how I joke. That's just not what I find funny. So for me to try to make a joke that I don't even find funny just because you might find it funny, isn't that just dishonest?
I mean, I think I could be way off base, but I feel like it still comes down to intent. And there's this difference between laughing with somebody and laughing at them, right? I mean, right. I don't think it's funny making fun of people for things that are outside of their control. If a friend of mine is, I don't know, short or something, I'd make fun of my fiance for being short all the time. I'm always like, she can't reach stuff.
I don't think Krista can control the country she lives in either.
But I would say generally, I think that making fun of people for things that are outside of their control, it's often kind of a dick move. It's a dick move. It's a dick move when I make fun of my fiance for being short, but it's, we're used to it. IQ, do you have a favorite joke?
So we lost IQ.
God damn it.
Studio line dropped, so I am working on it. But if you do have a joke, give us a call. Well, I guess try and give us a call. I'm working on it while I'm talking. I keep forgetting what I'm going to say. So before this show, I made sure so I could be in extra funny mode. I took like a couple hits. So I am a little bit more like spacey than normal.
I'm sorry this has turned out to be such a psychological episode.
No, I really wanted more than anything like this episode to be as fun as possible. But of course, learning something as well.
I mean, why not both?
And you keep changing the name in your parentheses, and my IQ was talking, and I'm sitting here like laughing as he's trying to say something serious because you keep changing the friggin' names.
You can't take me anywhere. Did you guys have any favorite jokes?
I mean, I am not telling any of my favorite.
Maybe you should hold on.
I blank. I can't come up with one.
One thing I think people underestimate is actually how difficult humor is and the intelligence it requires for specific types of humor. Like, there are times where I think of something funny and it will take me over an hour to figure out the perfect way to word it. Just two little sentences. Because if I just put one word wrong or have a comma out of place, it's all of a sudden not funny. And it's always fascinating to me how you can, like, just the change in one little thing can go from something not being funny to something being absolutely hysterical.
How can you tell?
Well, a comma makes it.
Explain this to me, how a comma can make something from not funny to funny.
A comma is the difference between we're eating grandma and we're eating grandma,
It's like there's tone, there's specific words or phrases, and it's so weird because you can literally have the same sentence written 5 different ways, and 4 of them could be offensive, and one of them is the funniest thing you've ever seen.
See, I don't know what that one is. I can find the 15 offensive ways to say something.
Well, and that's like, like I
You guys are thinking so hard about that. I feel like I just go like stumbling into rooms and making jokes, and maybe 1 in 10 lands, and I'm like, yeah.
You're just like, no, they're like 9 out of 10, and I'm just like, God damn it. And that's the other thing is I can only handle so much of funny people.
They're the worst.
Because
wait, Jenna,
it's already started. So no.
Is that why we haven't been talking as much? Because
that's why I don't talk to y'all, because I will cough and cough and cough. And I actually looked it up. And this is a thing that apparently the cough reflex and the laugh reflex are similar. And so it's pretty normal. Reassuring myself.
People are like, oh my God, Jenna has coronavirus. And it's like, no, it's not a joke. It's fine.
But I can't stop coughing. I hate coughing. So I just avoid laughter.
It's rare that I avoid laughter. Yesterday was actually one of those days. It's once in a great while I'll get like in a not best headspace. And if I'm in that headspace, like I don't want to like look at jokes. I don't want to do anything that's like relating to funny, because even like dancing will just be like, normally dancing works, but not all the time. Let's try. We do got a couple callers. So if you're on the line, we'll take you, but let's try and go as quickly as possible. So if you have a joke or something funny to say, let's try and make it quick. So first we've got Cindy from Belgium. Cindy.
Hey.
How are you?
Cindy. She sent truffles from Belgium, and they're amazing.
Ooh.
I'm bragging on you, Cindy. Thank you. Are you there?
Cindy, we can't hear you.
Oh no.
Oh no! We gotta brag on the truffles.
All right, let's try this one. Allison, can you hear us?
We'll come back to Cindy.
Hi. Yes.
Hi, Allison.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Jenna, Ita, Kenneth, how are you?
Yay.
Good. How are you?
Yay! You said you have a joke.
Yeah. I made this up when I was like 6 or 7 years old. What did the snake say when he got to heaven?
What?
Oh, for heaven's snakes.
That's so cheesy.
That had to kill in like 3rd grade. That's
See, that's another kind of cheesy. I love that.
Yeah. But I wanted to also bring up that like humor is good, but sometimes like when someone like myself, like I have what's called a nonverbal learning disorder, so I have trouble deciphering body language, and sometimes I have trouble figuring out when someone is like joking with me or being serious with me. So I have a habit of taking everything that is said to me very, very literally. So when it comes to certain jokes, sometimes it ends like I know the intent is good, but it ends up rubbing me the wrong way. Sometimes it's even to the point where I get triggered, and then I'm just like, oh my God, this is not funny at all. And, you know, they're laughing, and I'm just like, I don't get it. And sometimes it ends up like I know the intent is good, but it ends up putting me in a bad mindset. So I guess I just wanted to say that, you know, like when it comes to icebreakers and jokes and things like that, just like kind of keep in mind that the people you're talking to just could be taking everything at a very literal point of view,
right?
Or it could be misunderstood. You know what I mean?
I agree. And I think this is where like I find at times it's important to ask for that person's intent or what they like, hey, what did you mean by that? Because there are people who, for instance, like could be making the same joke, and while what like it can be taken as offensive, one is like, hey, I think this person will laugh. The other one is actually intentionally trying to mock you and just hiding it under humor. So there are people who make jokes with bad intent, and then there are other people like buffoons like me who just make a joke and end up making someone laugh, and then it's like sometimes it's offensive and it's like, shit, dude, I really didn't mean to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm sorry.
Sorry, that comment just made me forget what I was gonna say. Yes, so that's one thing that you can do is you can ask somebody's intent if they hurt your feelings, but also you could tell somebody that they hurt your feelings. Yes. You could say, hey, the way that you said that or what you said hurt my feelings. And then they can have the opportunity to explain themselves if they want.
Yeah. Like I had a conversation. I had a conversation with someone, and like I follow all the kitten rescues, you know, like tiny kittens and stuff, and they look after a lot of cats that are feral in feral colonies and stuff. And I decided to write some secular stories about how all of the cats look after each other and encourage each other to go to the feeding station where the humans are when they're sick and injured. And so I made the first part of the story and I posted it on Facebook in the group, and everybody was loving it. And then 3 months later, one of the main characters of my story had passed away suddenly. And it was a big shock and everything. So I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I had no idea. So, but I decided to write a part 2 and finish up the story and you know, kind of like an honor of this cat, like, cause he was feral, like he was this ferocious badass, and he definitely let the lady, like, who was doing his intake know that he was gonna defend himself, but she just, you know, like wrapped him in a towel and spoke to him gently, and he was, you know, fierce in spirit, but they started treating him and he started getting better, and then they when he was 100% better, they released him back into the forest. So and this was like 2 years ago. So a lot of people like fell in love with him. A lot of people were following him and everything. He had a pretty big influence. So to find out that he died all of a sudden, it was really shocking. And so the lady Shelley, she had an autopsy done on the cat, and it found out that he had ingested a little bit of antifreeze, which was fatal. But he had went to the main shelter feeding area, curled up in one of the boxes with the straw, and passed away peacefully. And so I'm explaining all of this to a friend on the phone, and he was like, I said that he passed away and that he ended up with antifreeze in the system, and this friend made this really, really gross joke, like he was saying, oh yeah, the cat did that on purpose and wanted to off himself or whatever. And I was just horrified, and I'm like, and he starts laughing, and I'm like, that's not funny. And he's laughing, and I'm like, that's not funny. And he's still laughing, and I said, that's not funny. And I just kept saying that it wasn't funny until he's like, okay. And then it was like I told him like what I just told you about, like the story and stuff, and he was like, well, why would she get an autopsy done? And I was like, because they wanted to know what happened to this poor cat. And like just after that joke, I was just like we changed the subject and stuff, and like I was feeling so disgusted. I'm just like, I don't even like, we were talking about like him coming over to visit, and it's like I didn't even want him to visit anymore. I was just so just turned off by that joke, and for it to be funny, and I'm like, that's not funny. So it's really, really rough. Like,
humor,
this person's supposed to be someone who cares, and it's like, and he knows how much I care about all these cats, and to say something like that, it just threw me for a loop, and I'm like, oh my god, this is not cool.
No, and that's where the importance of sorry, Kenneth.
I was gonna say, I mean, I respect that you in the aftermath there, when this person wanted to spend time with you, that you had some boundaries and recognize that you don't owe anybody any of your time. I've had this type of thing happen before, like what you're describing, where something horrific happens and then someone makes a joke. When I tell them about it, that I'm not in the headspace for, and I'll generally tell people, look, I get that you might be trying to deal with your discomfort at what I'm telling you, but I need you to know that I'm not in a place where I can deal with this right now using jokes. It sounds to me like this person who you were talking to may have just been trying to help themselves process a sad thing by making a joke about it, because they didn't have the sort of emotional maturity or presence of mind to deal with it in other ways. There's this idea that humor is tragedy plus time. I think that it sounds like, they lost sight of you in that moment and what you might have needed, and that their compassion for you might have been overwhelmed by some of their own issues or insecurities or inability to deal with grief or tragedy in a constructive way in that moment. I'm sorry to hear that you went through that.
I do think people who work around tragedy a lot more develop a darker sense of humor. For example, I know a lot of people, a lot of medical professionals who have some of the most effed up sense of humor. And I'm like, some things they say I would never laugh at, but it's how they cope. And it's, as long as they're, I guess, not saying it to other people, like in your case, Allison, and keeping it amongst themselves, it might not be as bad. But there are so many jokes that they'll make, and I'm just like, dude, that's really, really fucked up and not something I would ever joke about.
That's how it was when I was in the Army. We joke about stuff that, in retrospect, it's like, I can't believe we joke about such things. And it was normalized within that particular culture, but that doesn't make it right. And that doesn't mean that should spill over into other people's, lives or be imposed on them.
But there's nothing that we can do. We can't make other people tell the kinds of jokes that we want them to. So one thing that we can do when somebody tells a distasteful joke is we can try to sympathize and try to understand where that person might be coming from. And that fact is that, like Kenneth said, that person just might not have the emotional maturity to handle what they're being told.
Right. Allison, we do have to move on, but I really...
It's just a cat.
Or it's just a cat to them, or they simply don't care about cats. And that's a possibility. I'm not going to say that's it's a possibility.
Allison, I appreciate you taking the time to call in. We do have a couple other callers we got to get to. But thank you.
Okay.
It was nice talking to you.
Problem.
And thanks for your joke.
Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
There is one thing we haven't gotten to, and that is humor and pranks.
Oh, pranks.
I have been, I was raised on pranks. Like, my uncle used to screw with me all the time. So I have a solid sense of the difference between being an asshole and pranking someone. And it's weird because it can be so hard to explain to someone, but a lot of it comes down to consent. And here's what I mean. Let's talk about scare pranks for a second. If you just see somebody walking down the street, somebody you don't know if they have a heart condition, a pacemaker, you don't know anything, and you decide to do a scare prank, you're an asshole. That's not a prank. That's just being rude or disrespectful. On the flip side, for instance, when I decided to, before I pranked my HR, I actually asked how she was with scare pranks. I got her consent that she was okay with me screwing with her. So I waited. Like,
You preemptively went in and were like, "Hey, listen, I'm thinking about doing some shit, but I don't want to get fired, and I want to know, like, how far can I push this?"
How many times I go to HR before I do a joke to cover my ass. Like, hey,
Wow, that's what it's like to be a professional jokester.
yeah, dude, so what I started doing, like, around the office with the vice president, the my boss, HR, I had this terrifying doll, and I would hide it in, like, it's like a doll from the 50s. It's like 4 feet tall. It's horrifying. And I would have it, like, hiding in the ceiling, looking down. And the vice, all of a sudden I hear, "Oh my God!" It was the VP. He was, like, laying back in his desk, and he looks up and he just sees this face through the tile staring down at him. So, but that's the thing. I established the consent with certain people prior to doing something like that, because not everyone's open to it. Now, on the flip side, when this other guy, this other executive was getting hired on, 2 days before he started, I get a message from HR that says, "Hey, we want to set a new impression. So if you could wait like a week before you do any pranks on this guy, I would appreciate it."
Wow. Wow.
Oh my God.
I want to be funny. I want to make people laugh, but I recognize that pranking people can be harmful. And it's important to recognize that and not just be an asshole. Like, for instance, I'm going to start throwing myself under the bus. I got to be careful. But let's just say I just like pranking people. For example, I have a picture of this tarantula with, like, venomous fangs and stuff. And I put it up on our break room wall and said, "Missing tarantula. If you find, please call IT at this." And dude, there were so many people running into the office. Please tell me that's a joke. There's not really a tarantula in the break room, is there? It was just, like, so much. It was so funny.
See, that's an actual thing.
I can see Jenna's feels like, what would it be like to work in this environment?
I wouldn't work there. I can tell you that right now.
But here's the thing. I did it in a day where I knew the people that were in the office were acceptable of that prank. For instance, there was one of the older ladies who told me from the get-go she didn't like that type of humor. I did it on her day off because I'm not going to force, my goofiness onto other people.
I could see if that can make the office love you and hate her. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we only get to have fun when she's not here.
I guess I could see that happening, but that's why it's important to adjust your humor and pranks accordingly.
Yeah.
You can have fun in the office. You can toe the line. You just have to be responsible and respectful of other people.
This
and
is
that's
an interesting conversation.
Like, there are so many times, like, I'll just post screenshots of the things I've done on Facebook, and people that message me like, "How the hell do you get away with this at work?" It's like, because I take the time to think about my humor before I use it most of the time.
Okay, I'm trying to think of any time in my life that I've been exposed to pranks and took to it. And the only thing I came up with one. When I waited tables, what would happen if you left your screen open after you put in an order is another waiter could come up and ring up anything that they want. And so to keep people from leaving their screens open, what another person would do if they walk by and see somebody left their screen open is they would ring up a ticket on another table that isn't being sat, and they'd ring up like 1,000 waters. Because you have to go in and close that out in order to close out at the end of the day. So it's kind of like a lesson. But so that's the only kind of pranking. And that just seems so harmless compared to what you're talking about.
Well, and here's the thing, Jenna. I would never scare prank you. Not because Like, for example, right now you're pregnant. Any type of scare prank on you would just be being a friggin' asshole. Like, that's disrespectful because now I am risking, like, because when you scare somebody, like there's a jump, it races their heart, they could slip, they could fall. You have to factor these things in. You know, for instance, when I had one of my coworkers get in this little container and I put it in the HR office. And like I was like in communication with him, and I was like letting him know when she was going to walk in so he could jump out and scare the crap out of her. But I made sure that in the area she was being scared, there was nothing she could trip or fall into where she'd risk hurting herself severely. And
We have ankles. That's all we need.
yes, of course, things can happen, but that's like with someone who's pregnant, I'm not going to risk that, dude. I'm not going to be the guy that makes a pregnant woman laugh. She falls and something happens. Like, no. And that's where responsibility comes in.
So is there like a list of rules?
See, it's like I wish there were, because I can watch a prank and immediately be like, nope, that's, you can't do that. Here's why. This is the problem it's causing. Like, for some reason, my brain can break down humor. I can't break down a fallacy, but I can break down humor damn well. So, like, it's so hard to describe. It's situational, and I can evaluate a prank right when I see it and let you know why it's either good or why it's bad. You have to weigh the positive and negative consequences of the type of humor, the situation you're in, who you're doing it to, who your audience is, how people around will perceive it. There is so much critical thinking that goes into proper humor or responsible humor, in my opinion.
How do you feel about those pranks where like, I don't know, I've just seen so many videos of couples going back and forth at each other with like air horns and
that's like that's where they have to have an agreement. Like, honey, we're in agreement that we could scare the shit out of each other. We could end up shaving each other's heads. Like, there has to be a this comes down to consent. And you have to establish this with somebody. For example, if someone if I woke up and my head was all of a sudden shaved, I would be pissed off. However, if my partner and I had this agreement that things like that were acceptable, then it's okay. It's funny, but there's so much responsibility that comes into play. And this also goes into animals. Nothing pisses me off more than when I see someone prank an animal. There is no joke, nothing at all in any capacity where you can prank an animal and it's funny. Think about it like this. If I prank Kenneth right now, even if he doesn't understand it, I can take the time to explain what I was doing. If I do that with Cat, Cat's not going to be like, oh man, good prank, bro, you got me. No. The only thing the Cat interprets is fear and broken trust. It's completely irresponsible to prank people who can't comprehend it. Same goes people with mental disabilities.
Children.
Do it. Or children. Like, you don't make fun of a child or insult them or prank them when they don't even understand what a prank is, because all they're seeing is you harming them. They're not seeing the funny in it. And wow, I know a lot more about humor than I actually thought.
Well, we have 2 more callers in 15 minutes.
Oh, shit. I'm so sorry. Okay. Cindy, let's see if we can hear you. Are you there?
Hi.
Yay!
Yay!
Truffles!
Hey.
Truffles from Brussels! Right?
So yeah, it's good to talk to you.
Yes, thank you for the chocolate.
So yeah, Ethan and Kenneth, you're also going to receive a box of chocolates.
Oh my goodness.
If I got it, you should get it in a few days.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Aww.
So yeah, I was calling about humor because it's my mother didn't have any humor, never had. And when I was a child, I was a bit like her. I mean, I took as an insult every joke, even though there was no malicious intent behind it. and I learned to make fun of myself because I don't remember when or how I started learning this, but I realized at some point that you need to be able to laugh at yourself before you're able to laugh at the others. And so I learned humor in time, and now, like you all said, it's a coping mechanism. So I think part of it can be learned. I don't know what do you think about it?
I think self-deprecation is like super valuable. I mean, if you can't look, we're all ridiculous, and if we can't laugh at ourselves just as human beings, I think that's a rough place to be in. If you can't laugh at yourself or recognize where you're silly or
It is, but so even self-deprecating humor requires thought. For instance, if right now I only utilize self-deprecating humor and I overdo it, like for instance, Kenneth, if I'm in a conversation with you and throughout an hour and a half, every joke I tell is self-deprecating, it eventually stops being funny and people start viewing it as an insecurity. They take you less seriously and they don't view you as a confident person.
Sure.
Also, coming into humor, if you do too much humor that is self-focused, it doesn't matter how funny it is. If you do it all the time, people start to think, wow, this person is exhibiting narcissistic traits, when in reality, they're just focusing on humor. And there is so much to talk about.
With everything, I mean, you need to measure it. I mean, it's like you can have fun about someone just once, but if you do it 10 times or 20 times, it becomes harassment. So humor has a very important value. It's timing. So the first time you tell a joke, if the timing is right, then the joke is good. But if you repeat it too many times, then you lose the timing, and then you lose the humor itself.
Yeah, I guess it just takes practice.
A lot. And
yeah.
It's time, patience, experimenting, posting.
So it sounds like this is something that takes like a dedicated effort. So maybe that's why I haven't really delved into it, is because I just haven't gotten to that part yet.
Maybe I think, hey Puck, I think I just found out where all my I'm expending all of my brain energy in.
Well, but seriously, it sounds very time consuming and energy robbing. So
it is, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
I was gonna say, there's a reward.
While I could spend, there are times where, for instance, I'll make a Facebook post, I'll set it to only me. I'll read it. I'll wait 2 hours. I'll read it again. I can't get it quite right. I'll go the next day. I'll reread it. And then all of a sudden, bam, that's what it's missing right there. And then you find it and you post it. Now, did I expend a lot of energy doing that? Yes. But the return, say I make 40 to 50 people laugh. I just made 40 to 50 people's day a little bit easier, or just took them away from the bullshit of their life. So to me, expending all that energy with it is worth it when you have a larger payoff. Because I don't know, again, to me, I find humor to be one of the most useful tools at our disposal.
You clearly put an awful lot of thought into it. I'm trying to think like the last thing that I tweeted was a thing about how people getting stuff stuck up their butts during a pandemic puts undue strain on emergency workers. So be careful what you put in your butt. Tie a string around it, maybe, be safe.
I saw that.
It's there's no thought at all on my head when I'm doing this. It's just
different kinds of humor.
Yeah. It's very interesting, the differences in process.
For me, it's some of the best medicine. When someone has said to me, can you just come over? I just need you to cheer me up for a few minutes. Dude, being able to have that effect on somebody that you can turn their like day from just horrible to great, or someone could be in a horrible mood and they can count on you to change that mood, that's more valuable than anything. Like,
Well,
like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just such a great feeling to be able to do that and give people those moments that they can live for. It's a memory.
When you said it's medicine, it reminded me of something. Jenna, do you remember you were doing one of your Carrot Noises streams and someone said something about laughter is the best medicine? And I was like, my dad used to say laughter is the best medicine, which is why my little brother died of tuberculosis. And you, for a moment there, you were like, oh my God, that's so sad. You had a brother? And I was like trying to feel out where Jenna's sense of humor has been. I'll get it calibrated one of these days.
I don't fucking know. When you figure it out, let me know.
Jenna is, I have not figured out her humor either. I'm usually very good at pinpointing, like, okay, this is what's like I'm like a homing missile with humor. Like I'll find exactly what makes someone laugh. And with Jenna, it is very hard to pinpoint.
It's random. Like it'll be like a voice that some like your Jordan Peterson voice you use just hits my funny bone. Or like I don't know, just so maybe watch Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and you might get a better idea of my humor.
It's a great show.
Great show.
Cindy, what do you think of self-deprecating humor? Do you use it?
Yeah, I use it a lot because I for a long time I've been mocked by people, and like Kenneth said, it's a defense mechanism. And now I realize that when you're different from other people, you need to make sure this cannot be used to hurt you. As someone said earlier in the comments, it's the Tyrion Lannister defense. Wear it as an armor, so it cannot be used to hurt you, and that's basically the same thing. Because last year, about the same time last year, I was working with a new team, and one of the guys, we were talking about difference in income between men and women, and one of the guys, I barely knew him, and in the meantime, he became one of my best friends. And he said, "Hey, Cindy, now you become a woman. Are you going to lose 20% of your salary?" And at the time, it made me laugh because I thought it was a good joke. Because as you said earlier, the intent is very, very important. And on the other side, you don't know the entirety of the person you have in front of you. Maybe they can have some things they hide. So there is no single topic that you cannot that someone cannot be hurt by. You see what I mean? There's nothing you can say that someone will be hurt, and you can't know that before you do. So I think we should focus less on being careful to what we say and be more careful to how we answer to people who are hurt when we discover they are, because you just can't protect everyone. You will hurt someone with a joke. It will happen no matter how effort you put on to avoid it. So I think we should be able to laugh about everything. And if we hurt someone, then only then we should make the step to explain what we meant, to help this person, and to show that we didn't mean to hurt them. What do you think?
I like that. I think that focus on tell jokes with good intentions, and if someone gets hurt, then be focused on managing that in a way that's responsible and communicating that you didn't intend to hurt them. Beyond that, I don't know how much else he really can do.
Yeah.
I told a hysterical joke one time that really offended a friend of mine who was Catholic, and yeah, I didn't mean to offend them. The joke involves nuns, but I didn't think it was, I didn't think it was going to like offend their Catholicism or their, for them to take it like I was saying something negative about their religion. Because that wasn't how I intended it. But once it became clear that that was what had happened, then it had to be, oh my God, like, I'm sorry, that wasn't what I was trying to do. I, missed the mark on this one. Forgive me, kind of a thing. And after that, what more can you do?
Talking about what should or shouldn't be funny is such an interesting thing because we don't really decide, do we? It's not like we get to say, oh, I want to laugh at that, or I don't want to laugh at that. It's not like you plan out laughing at something.
It can be totally involuntary. It can be, this sort of surrender.
Right. So I guess that is a good way to look at it because I don't really use self-deprecating humor. When I feel I need, so if that's a defense mechanism, my defense mechanism would instead be to think of every reason why I don't care what you think. That's just where my mind goes. And so, I mean, that works just fine for me, but I also understand that everybody uses humor for different reasons. And I can't assume that just because I'm hurt by something that the intent was malicious.
And that's an important thing, I think. Unfortunately, I've seen, some of my skeptic friends make this mistake where you will say something that may appear harmful, but you don't mean it harmful. And then they make the mistake of assuming you have this intent to be harmful rather than saying, hey, what was your intent or what was the purpose of you saying this? And that's where skeptics, to me, at times, some skeptics fail. They want to assume the reason somebody else is doing something rather than just ask. Cindy, we do got to wrap this up because we only have a couple minutes left. I thank you for calling in. It was nice talking to you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, Cindy.
Good night.
There are like two other things I wanted to touch base on real quick. One is, like, for instance, if I'm engaging in like a political conversation, let's say on Facebook, and someone just takes a dig at me, I have two choices. And most of the time I try and not take the aggressive response. It's not always perfect, but I have found that sometimes that person making that joke, they may be misrepresenting me or misrepresenting my position and making a joke based on that. But if I laugh at it and I say, yeah, I get what you were going with that and joke it off, all of a sudden the tone of the conversation changes. They now respect the fact that I can laugh at myself and they are now open to listening to me. And I am not recommending by any means other people do it. This is what I do. But I find that it can be one of the most tactful things you can do in a conversation when establishing rapport with someone is sometimes letting the little things slide and laughing them off, even at times if they're not funny.
If this is somebody that you actually want to establish rapport with.
Of course. I'm a glutton for punishment, so I have no problem with people I don't even want to talk to making fun of me. Like I'll make posts on my local residence page and I'll get ripped apart. I'm just like, whatever, cool. Like it happens. But it doesn't try and get through to those people. But this brings me to my final point. I was in a talk with Puck the other day, and I was going to post a status, which to an extent was straw manning good and evil from the Christian perspective. And we went back and forth a little bit, and we talked about I'm just so you know, I'm not quoting him verbatim. I am repeating the conversation as I interpreted it to the best of my ability. We were talking about if God lets something bad happen and the long-term outcome is good, is it then okay to let that bad thing happen? For example, one of the reasons I am okay with self-deprecating humor, being made fun of, or being ostracized, is because of it happened to me the majority of my life. And I was specifically picked on a lot until 5th or 6th grade. Now, while the things that happened to me were bad and sucked, the outcome for me is a more positive experience because I have learned to let things go and not take certain things as seriously. So, what do you do in that scenario? How do you determine, like, do you let the child go through a certain amount of getting made fun of to toughen up their skin, or do you stop it all the time?
How do you feel about spanking?
Oh, I am completely against spanking.
I see them pretty much on the same page. I think that when you look at spanking for punishment and bullying, those are traumatic things that you have to get through, and those are the reasons that you have to come up with resilient ways to get through them. And so, do I think that you should be putting this on people just so that they can get some extra tools on their belt? I think that people have plenty of opportunities to do that all by themselves.
I completely I agree with you.
Yeah.
That was it. That was all I had.
Do we have time to take Mike's call?
I don't know. Do we have time?
Real quick, maybe just y'all have a minute?
Yeah.
I just want to see. He called and waited.
Wait. So it says Mike, you back, but I have a feeling this is like.
It might be a troll, but we don't know.
No, I think it's actually going to be IQ. Is that you, IQ?
Oh, it might be IQ back calling you back.
It's me.
It says Mike.
Yay! Chris, Mike.
Chris Laundry.
I don't remember saying my cue, but hey, language barriers. I don't, but anyway, we'll make this brief.
I'm glad you could call back.
Situational comedy. It's the world around you. It's being able to take the little everyday things and, finding joy in that. I was on the after party with Neil 604 Atheist yesterday, and he disappears off stream. He has to go do something. He's gone for a few minutes, and I'm joking about he's out there unboxing, because he eats those THC gummy bears, right? And I'm like, he's out there unboxing that new 5-pound gummy bear that he got from the head shop, and he's not going to come back. They're going to find him butt naked in the yard in the morning, like holding on to this huge gummy bear with the ear missing. Yeah, that shit's funny to me because parties. I've been in the party scene where people get too fucked up. There may or may not be a donkey or something involved, and this is where the funny shit happens, in life. And you take those moments and you can laugh about them because nobody's really getting hurt. The crazy, weird, awkward things happen, and you put it out on the table, and we understand that because we all have those awkward moments. That's why I loved Seinfeld, because it was it's just the show about everyday awkwardness, and we all get that. The second point I'm making is you had said it's a tool, and tools can be versatile. And it's kind of almost like a serious point. Like, I use comedy sometimes to pull answers out of people that you can't directly ask them questions to gauge somebody.
What do you mean?
There's a particular joke that I use to kind of gauge people with. Now I'll get to this, and I'm gonna come around on it, but it might be slightly triggering. But I'll ask somebody.
Are you sure you want to tell it?
I'll pose it as a joke, like, what do you call a lesbian with 2 Rottweilers? And they'll spit off all these misogynistic and bigoted things, and I look at them, I'm like, wow. I mean, I was gonna say, have you tried asking her name? I guess that works too, and walk off, and it starts,
yeah.
Oh my God, I'm a fucking bigot.
It's like the classic. It's like the classic. What do you call a black guy who flies a plane? A pilot? You racist? That kind of thing, right?
Like me?
Yeah. You can gauge somebody. You can't just come right out and say, like, "Are you a bigot?" They're gonna be. You're just gonna get a wall. You're just gonna get a fuck you, or whatever defenses they have about how they've been raised up. But if you can tap into their comedy center, what do they find funny? Do you find this funny? I'm gonna show you real quick that shit ain't funny. And you should really give this more thought. And comedy can be a really good tool to pull this out of people because they don't really think much about it because they've been in this circle of people who joke about stuff like that. And it's just kind of horrible to joke about stuff like that because they don't really know anybody like that personally. So if you can bring some, humanity to this situation, kind of just plant a little seed in their head like, oh, I've never really given this much thought, or that kind of makes sense. And, pose it jestfully, not being confrontational and leave it at that. See, planting a seed with comedy is a great strategy to get into somebody and get through to somebody because you're getting behind the defenses.
That's exactly what it is, IQ. It establishes a line of comfort. And when somebody is comfortable with you, their psychological defenses drop away. They listen, they engage with you more. And a side effect of someone being comfortable with you is them being trustworthy with you. And when they start trusting you, they respect your opinion more. And this is why, I try and use this as often as I can with people because it is a useful tool that can help us change people's minds, I think, more than people realize.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a thing. There's humor and there's questions that are two extremely useful tools for this stuff that we're doing.
Yeah.
IQ. And yes, Stephanie, the donkey did consent to the fun, and it's not what you're thinking. If you've never drinking with a donkey before, I highly recommend it because they are fucking hilarious. Get them some get a keg, get the donkey drinking. And, I've been to parties that have donkeys and, you can just sit there, you're leaning on the stall right next to them and you can talk to them, you having a good time. They're like, oh, and it's a good time. It's fucking hilarious because a drunk donkey is just, it's just a great thing.
I don't know how I feel about drunk donkeys.
He was drinking. It's not like you're sticking a funnel in their mouth and force feeding. The donkey wanted to drink, and they keep going back to it, and they liked it. Animals do imbibe alcohol. The monkeys they go to the fruit that's been fermenting on the ground.
Oh man, we need to have a whole nother episode on this.
Oh yeah,
animal consent.
To inebriation. Animal consent. Oh, that's gonna be an interesting one. But okay. Anyway, there was a lot of talk about Velcro last night. We're not going to get into this, but
oh god.
On next week's episode, never mind.
Thanks, IQ.
Thanks, IQ.
Oh my
we gotta
god.
wrap it up. It was good talking to you.
Yep.
Bye. I want to jump back to a comment made just a few minutes ago when it was said Puck enjoys cat fail videos. There's an important distinction between a fail and a prank. So, for instance, if I see a cat slip into something stupid, they don't get hurt, it's funny, but that's different from making them slip. For instance, if I am walking and I slip and fall on ice and my feet go flying in the air, that's funny. But if you run up and trip me and my feet go flying in the air, that's a prank. You're being an asshole. So there are two very different things between a fail and a prank.
Do you feel the same way about the cucumbers?
Be nice to our animal friends, you guys.
About what?
About the cucumbers with the cats?
No, because that's a prank. You're taking this cucumber, something they have. I believe it is please don't quote me on this. From my understanding, they think it's like a snake or a predator or something. That's not funny because you are putting them in a situation that they find dangerous or harmful and you're scaring them. So
how is that different from jumping out at someone?
When you jump out at someone or jumping out at a cat, like a cat.
So I can't see how having a cucumber frighten a cat would be different from hiding behind a corner somewhere and jumping out and scaring a person. Because that person that's afraid of you thinks that you're a predator.
A person can consent to it. I wouldn't do it to a stranger, for example.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's a cat can't say, yeah, you can prank me, man.
I see. Okay.
But a person can say, hey, yes, I find scare humor funny.
Okay.
My uncle and I, we would scare prank each other all the time using this doll. Like, for instance, I'll make this real quick because we got to go. This doll is terrifying. So what I did one day is I put it in the trunk. I tied the hands of it to the roof of the trunk. And then I told my uncle, I'm like, dude, I can't get my trunk open. I need your help. I'm going to pull the lever and I want you to, yank it up because it's stuck. So he yanks it up and the doll comes flying out at him and he screeches so loud. Like, it was awesome. But we had this understanding that was okay. However, in recent years, he actually said, hey, I can no longer take these scare pranks. They're not like funny to me anymore. Can we stop? Cool. Guess what? I no longer have consent to prank him. So now if I go ahead and do this scare prank on him, I'm violating his consent and being an asshole.
All right. I second that.
And that's all I got. Anything you guys want to say before we go, Jenna? What do you got going on this week?
I am meditating every morning at 10 a.m. Central for 15 minutes live on Twitch. And I'm releasing Atheostasis videos every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central with Discord discussion following so that we can learn a little bit more after. And I have Carrot Noises every Friday at 3:30 for 2 hours where we're painting. And I actually had somebody buy my first painting this week.
Yay!
Is the Carrot Noises shop officially open?
It is officially up and running.
All right.
And then after the Ethan and Jenna show next week, I will be on AXP again.
Nice.
Yay.
Yay!
Kenneth?
What happened?
What do you?
Oh, with me? Do you want to hear the joke with the nuns?
Yes.
Ethan, are you on board? Okay, so these 4 nuns, they die and they arrive at heaven at the pearly gates. Okay, so St. Peter's there, and next to St. Peter, there's this like water, almost like, it looks like a bird bath thing with holy water in it. And so St. Peter's there. He asks the first nun if she's ever sinned, and she goes, "Yes, I admit, I touched a penis with my finger." And St. Peter says, "Okay, well, dip your finger in the holy water, and then you may enter the kingdom of heaven." So she does, and she goes into heaven. Second nun gets asked the same question. Nun goes, "Yes, I touched a penis with this whole hand." And St. Peter goes, "All right, well, dip the hand in the holy water, and then you may enter heaven." So she does. And at this point, the fourth nun cuts in the line. And St. Peter goes, "What's going on?" And she goes, "Listen, you got to let me go first because I'm not going to gargle that after Sister Margaret sticks her ass in." That's the joke. That's it. I'm not proud of it, but that's the joke.
It's a dirty joke. Warning.
And on that note, like and subscribe, check everyone out. And I got to go jump over to do like the call moderation shit with Talk Heathen. So if you have a supernatural claim, story, belief, call Talk Heathen. Everyone, I hope you have a really good week and be safe. Oh, wait, what's our closer?
Be happy.
Be happy? Okay, be happy.
Laugh.